Does it actually make sense to do the cool shit that mimics jiu-jitsu in the weight room if you actually want to get stronger on the mat? Today we're going to be talking about this idea of general strength training versus sports mimicry in the weight room. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Path of Milo, this time with video. I'm Morten Winter. I'm a BJJ black belt and an exercise physiologist with a master's degree in sports science and health. This show is my attempt to contribute to the world of grappling and the sport that I've been doing for over 20 years now, and that I love and that I hope I'm going to be able to do until the day that I'm no longer here. It's very easy to get drawn into the novelty of new exercises that you might see on TikTok or Instagram, stuff that looks like the sport, but you're doing it in the weight room with resistance in order to try to get better at the sport that you really love doing. And believe me, I understand the lure of doing stuff that looks more like the stuff that you like to do instead of doing the stuff that you might actually need to do in order to get better at the sport, like squats, deadlifts, presses, the general strength training that actually makes you a lot stronger compared to the circus moves that looks really cool in the gym. They might be hard to do because there's a coordination component to it and there's a lot of complexity involved, and then you're adding load on top of it. But it looks really cool and it's gonna get way more likes than doing regular things like squats, lunges, Bulgarian split squats, bench press, stuff like this. A common theme is that whenever someone is the best or one of the best or has won a championship, one of the top athletes, people are always very interested in seeing what are they doing for strength and conditioning. And it's very boring to show the regular strength exercises. It's much more interesting to show stuff that's unique and specific because everybody thinks that there's some kind of magic pill, some kind of exercise that's gonna make you way better and give you the advantage. And the reason you don't have it in the gym right now or on the mat right now is because you're not doing this specific exercise in the gym. Some common exercises or themes that I see a lot are stuff like mimicking the double leg takedown but with bands, so you get resistance in the movement that you're trying to get better at. Could be doing like a seonage throws on a cable cross machine or with a band. Or for the strikers out there, it could be putting weights on your wrists and on your ankles and then like punching with resistance on your arms and your legs in order to try to more powerful punches. Another big one is the whole BJJ solo drills or BJJ flow drills that you can do on your own, where you are trying to do conditioning without a partner, but it looks like jiu-jitsu. So you're doing these moves on the mat by yourself, similar to animal flows or gymnastica natural. Some of these systems that make the promise that if you do this, it's going to transfer into jiu-jitsu. Another big one that's also quite popular is the whole functional patterns thing, where you are standing and doing complex moves because there's this idea that you need to train your fascia. So people will do like rotational stuff with a cable, a dumbbell in one hand, and sometimes on an unstable surface in order to try to get better at sports or athletic activity, because they think that this transfers better than doing general strength training. And today we're going to challenge this idea a little bit, or a lot actually. First though, I want to make the point that there might be a place for these solo drills. If you have never done gymnastics or athletic activity and your body awareness is very poor, then you will for sure get a lot out of doing these things in the gym on your own without the whole chaotic environment that you see in jiu-jitsu or wrestling or judo, for instance. So for sure it has its place, but it's probably not gonna be the thing that tips the scale in your favor if you've been doing the sport for a long time and actually know how to do the basic movement patterns. An example of an old school exercise that has been around in the jiu-jitsu and judo community for many years, and I think is something that's still predominant, is this idea that if I want to get better at pulling, say I'm doing gi stuff, then I need to do my pull-ups, or it will benefit me to do my pull-ups where I take the gi, I wrap it around the bar, and then I'm doing pull-ups in the gi sleeves or in my belt to strengthen my grip as I'm doing the pulling motion. The problem with this is that the pull-up is really good at actually developing pulling strength, but when you're doing it like this, the limiting factor doesn't become your pulling musculature, it becomes the gripping musculature. And if you've been doing gi training for many years, or if you've done like a hard session or period of time where you've done more gi training than no gi training, you've probably experienced that the finger joints start to ache a little bit, and you need to tape it because you get like little sprains whenever you do a lot of gi training, mostly because people are stripping the grips. If you then layer on top of this that you're also doing your resistance work, where you have to hold this exact grip and you're putting more strain on these little joints, then guess what? This becomes the limiting factor, and you're no longer training the back musculature the same way you would if this wasn't the limiting factor. So my point with this is that there is for sure a place for training the grip, and there is a place for training the muscles that actually pull and create the motion. But those are two different qualities or two different things that you might want to train, and training it all at the same time doesn't always make the most sense, actually, when you're looking at the science of getting stronger. What might be a better idea is to train the pull in isolation and get stronger in the muscles and the systems that are creating the force. And then if your grip is the limiting factor, you go and you train that afterwards so that those two don't limit each other. And then the integration actually happens on the mat. It doesn't happen in the weight room. And this is a huge misconception that a lot of people still haven't gotten around to understanding and implementing in their own training. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this. There's an overarching principle whenever we're trying to adapt and get better at sports. It's called the SAID principle, SAID, if you want to look it up. And it stands for specific adaptation to impose demand. And it basically just means that you get better at whatever you do, but very specifically. So if I want to get good at a sport, I need to do that sport. And trying to mimic it in the weight room doesn't make me better at the sport. It will give me qualities that I then need to take into the sport and then hone them on the mat or in that setting, in that environment, in order for it to transfer. And here's an interesting implication. If I'm trying to do loaded techniques where I try to mimic the sport that I'm actually trying to get better at. Say I'm taking a weighted vest and I'm putting it on me, and then I'm doing single leg shots or double leg shots in the gym or towards like a heavy bag or something. Then I'm suddenly changing my body weight, which means that I'm also going to change the coordination required and the timing required for me to actually perform the skill without weight. The same thing would apply if I would take, say, dumbbells, put them in my hands, and then try to practice punching in order for me to get better and more powerful in my punches. Because now I have weights in my hands and it's harder to move, so it must transfer into having more powerful punches. But then I'm suddenly changing the mechanics and the coordination of everything because my hands suddenly weigh more than they do whenever I'm actually doing the sport. So you might actually end up doing yourself a disfavor if you're loading the movement patterns that you're trying to improve. And it might actually make you more sloppy than crisp in your technique and the way that you're doing it. An example of this that I experienced early on when I was training, before I did Jiu-Jitsu, I was doing karate for around 10, 12 years before I transitioned into more grappling dominant arts. We had a trainer who loved doing cardio, and he thought it was really important to do a lot of karate specific cardio. And his idea of doing karate specific cardio was this. We would practice techniques. So we would try to, like hit backs. We would try to hit them hard, be precise, be fast, all of the things, all the qualities that you need if you're going to be technically good, technically sound. But then afterwards, he would have us do a ton, like a shitload of reps with the same technique, but at high speed and high repetition. But the thing is that you never do this in the sport. And what actually ends up happening is as you fatigue more and more and more, your techniques get sloppier and sloppier and sloppier. So you're actually training poor movement patterns at high volume because you're doing a ton of reps with the idea that it's gonna make you better at your sport, where in reality, you're just getting more sloppy. And even if you're a black belt level, the technique at the end of the session looks like you're a beginner because people are too tired to actually produce the force and the crispiness that you need. So this is a misunderstood way of applying conditioning to a sport. Because in a match, this would never happen, because the way that karate at that time was set up, and still is that you have to be fast in and out in order for you to score a point. Where here, you're getting slower and you're getting sloppier and you're getting worse at doing the thing that you actually need in the sport itself. So if we just look at the research broadly, everything points towards the fact that general strength transfers better than doing specific moves that try to mimic the sport under load. So by doing general training, what we actually get better at is we get better at producing force, usually measured as rate of force development. So it's this ability to go from 0 to maximum force production fast. And the better you are at that, the better your chances are that you're gonna win in anything that requires you to produce power, which is most athletic activities that we like to watch. So it's not just grappling, it's also sprinting, it's basketball, it's football, even stuff like tennis or badminton. You need to be able to move fast, which means you need to be able to move your body quickly. Another thing that general strength training is better at is building maximum force production. So your ability to contract your muscles and actually produce a lot of force, regardless of how long time it takes. So in Jiu-Jitsu, this would mean your ability, for instance, to create the squeeze with maximum force, or lift your opponent up, or once you get the hold of the neck, to actually squeeze and hold that position. And the better you are at producing maximum force, the better your chances are that this is going to transfer into your sport if you integrate it correctly. The third thing is general strength training increases the size of the muscle better than doing these very complex specific mimicking moves. And the bigger muscle will always have a bigger potential to create higher forces. Plus, for most people doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or grappling, it actually becomes more fun when you have more muscle mass, until a certain degree, of course. Because if you're a little bit on the heavier end and it's functional mass, not just fat, then your ability to move athletically also increases if you actually integrate it and train the specific stuff that you want to get good at. And all of these qualities directly enhance performance without messing up the specific motor patterns of your sport. So what's more important than visual similarity is actually that the force and the velocity matches the stuff that you do in your sport. So in Jiu-Jitsu, for instance, it would be that I'm trying to move the weight fast, because usually what wins the game, if we're talking about the physical characteristics, is that you're able to do like a fast and powerful snap down or fast and powerful lift, as opposed to doing something slow. So whenever we're doing sport-specific training, we want to look at what's called dynamic correspondence. So are the same muscles involved as they are in my sport? So if I have a sport that's very upper body dominant or very pushing dominant, maybe it's a good thing to get stronger in those patterns, like overall patterns. There might be some benefit in doing the opposite as well. So climbers, for instance, do a ton of pulling and very little pushing. So for general health and for reducing the risk of overuse injuries, it's actually beneficial for climbers to do more pushing because they do so much pulling in their sport. For Jiu-Jitsu, we do a lot of squeezing, and we do a lot of stuff where we're in here and not so much where we're up here, kind of extended. We have some of it whenever we're doing standing to kind of avoid getting pulled down. But having that in the physical conditioning program might actually be a good idea just for your posture and your overall health and injury resistance as well, like doing more extension work and not just having everything come in here. Also, it's important to think about, are the contractions that I do in my sport-specific training similar to the stuff that I do in Jiu-Jitsu? In Jiu-Jitsu, we do everything. We pull in, we push away, we kind of resist getting stretched. So we both have the concentric and the eccentric component, but we also have quite a lot of static work. So whenever you get to a position, you want to be able to hold that position and squeeze. And the static component as well might actually be something that you're not training that much in the gym. So also, is the velocity the same? So am I training to get faster? Am I intending to move the weight fast, or am I training everything slow? And there's a huge difference if I'm doing one or the other in terms of how it transfers to my sport. And what about the range? Am I actually moving into full range, or am I doing shortened reps? And how does that transfer into my sport? And what about the range of motion? Am I actually using full range of motion, or am I doing shortened reps? And how does that transfer into the sport that I'm trying to get better at if I'm a grappler or striker? Usually I would say that it's way better to train with full range of motion, because you also train your flexibility and your mobility that way, and you get strong in these extended positions, which is usually where injuries happen as well. And then lastly, are we actually applying force in the direction that we need to do in our sport? So it doesn't mean that it needs to be specifically this or this or this angle. It means that, am I doing a lot of overhead stuff in my sport? Then I probably need to do some overhead pushing or pulling as well. Is everything horizontal? Then I need to get stronger in this pattern. And in Jiu-Jitsu, it's basically everything. So you need to get strong in 360 degrees around, so that you're actually prepared to go into all of these weird positions that we get put into. So we have to look at the demands of the sport, and not so much does it mimic, does it look like what I'm doing on the mat. So like I said before, motor specific patterns matter. If I'm trying to overload a skill, then I might end up messing up that movement pattern. So it's way better to get generally strong and then practice the skill as close to the live situation as possible, with the speed and with the intent that you're gonna do it in the sport, not under artificial load. So instead of adding wrist weights and ankle weights and doing pulls against a band or a cable cross machine or standing on a Bosu ball because you think that it's gonna be great to train on an unstable surface while you're pulling something in one hand and pushing a dumbbell in the other hand, trying to mimic athletic motion, or doing like double leg shots with a band behind you so you actually have resistance going into the shot, which doesn't actually happen whenever you're doing a shot in wrestling. There's no one pulling you from behind. There's no resistance that you need to overcome going forward. Then I would recommend you doing other stuff that actually transfers better. So do the squats, do the power cleans, do the sled pushes, and do like heavy medicine ball, explosive throws into a wall to try to build those qualities generally. And then you transfer them in by actually throwing an opponent or doing your shots against your training partner, doing the sweeps, doing the passes, all the stuff that we do in the gym with a partner with the specific intent that I want to do in my training. So you build all the capacities in the gym, and then you express them and you integrate them in the actual activity, in the sport that you're trying to get better at. And this doesn't just go for wrestling and grappling and jiu-jitsu and judo. It's the same with American football, soccer, handball, tennis, golf, all the things that people are trying to get better at by trying to mimic them in the gym. Most athletes will be better off doing general strength training and then spending the time better at practice, integrating those skills into the actual game. As I said, there is some value in doing these movements where you're trying to mimic visually what it is that you do in the sport, but I would do them under low load, and I would use it as a warm-up, as a prep, or for someone who has very low body awareness that needs to learn how to do a front roll, how to do a cartwheel, how to do a shrimp, how to actually move like you're moving when you're doing a double leg shot. There is a place for this, but once you're competent at a certain level, then trying to add load to it doesn't really transfer into the sport anymore. Their place is in the technique work. It's not the conditioning, and it's not the strength work. So it doesn't have a place in the heavy lifting plan. It's technique work, not force production. So the shift that I would encourage you to make is this. In the gym, you're not trying to simulate jiu-jitsu or any other martial art. You're trying to build the engine and the resiliency and the chassis, basically, that's gonna support you getting better at the sport. That's gonna allow you to train more specifically, to train more skill, to get better technical, build your strategy so that you get better at the actual sport that you wanna get better at. You're building the physical foundation that's gonna allow you to express yourself better in your sport, because general strength gives you more power, more force production, more resiliency. If you do it right, it gives you more flexibility and movement options, basically. It will give you a bigger buffer for fatigue and hopefully allow you to stay in the sport that you love for a longer time. So the next time someone is putting weights on their ankles or their hands and they start to punch, or they're doing resisted double leg shot to try to improve the speed of the shot, or even better, if they're doing the cable seonage, just smile at them, go over and do your heavy deadlifts, your power cleans, your squats, your lunges, all the good stuff that's actually going to transfer into your sport. I hope this clarified something for you. And if you liked it, send it to your training partner. And if you're looking for a structured training program, head to pathofmilo.com and look at the stuff that they were offering there. Give us a follow and a like. It helps us to grow and spread the word to more people. Also, I have an Instagram that's up and running. And if you would go in there and give us a follow, it would be very much appreciated. And maybe we can even get above 10 followers, which would be great. So thank you for tuning in, and until next time.